24/7 podcast.
Hi, Reg. How are you doing? Everybody okay out there? Yeah, here we are, locked and loaded, ready to go. The Rush Limbaugh program and the EIB network. It is Friday.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Yeah, I know. I've got to do the Maxine Waters stuff from yesterday. This is going to be a perfect day to do it, too. Open Line Friday, where the focus is always on insanity. And thanks for reminding me about the Seton Motley thing. We got to get to that, too. That's just an interesting take on where the media capital is now. His theory is it's not Washington or New York anymore. It's Silicon Valley. But I will explain this as the program unfolds. Open Line Friday means that you can talk about whatever you want to, including the news of the day, but it doesn't have to be restricted to that. For example, if you're very, very scared that we've got a tropical storm out there, you believe this. I got a note last night. Hey, have you seen this? A tropical storm? So where? It's right out there. It's in the Atlantic. Oh, the hurricane season doesn't start till June 1st. I said, that's right. So what the hell's out there? Well, they're saying it's a tropical storm, the hurricane season. So I went and looked at it. And naturally, it's like 2,500 miles away. It's going to dissipate today. It's near the Azores. It's a nothing burger. It's a pure... It's just... you just can't escape. These people I'll tell you what's happening. They're getting more and more panicked as they are slowly coming to realize what happened to them last November. They have been in a constant state of denial. And the awareness of just how deep the defeat was and how widespread, I think, is causing panic throughout much of the left. And I will have examples of that. The fallout in this Hillary book, this is just stunning. And now people are starting to get mad at the two authors of for exactly what I said yesterday. Where were you during the campaign? If you knew it was this bad, why didn't you say something? Well, we had to save it for our book so we could earn some money. Yeah, but what about the country? What about saving the country? You knew the Hillary campaign was in the dumpster. You knew it was in the toilet, and you didn't report. That's because we had inside access, and we had to protect our sources. And we had... In fact, you know what the controversy is today? Apparently, Hillary's speech announcing her candidacy, when she gave it, and the immediate reporting, it was glowing. It was upbeat. The reporting, one of the best speeches ever. What a way to ignite and kick off the campaign. This is Hillary Clinton at her best. And yet, the same guy who said that in the book writes about how bad it was and how horrible it was and how uninspiring it was. And so leftists remember this guy and everybody else in the media heralding Hillary's announcement speech, and they read this book, and they find out that everybody thought it was excrement. And they're starting to realize that there were all kinds of people that knew how really bad this campaign was and in what bad shape it was, but nobody said anything. And one of the reasons for that is the fear of the Clintons. Anyway, let's get to the Paris attacks, because this is pressing here at the moment. One thing that makes me kind of curious here, I've been waiting for it. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe you have. I have not seen anybody in the drive-by media suggest the Russians might be behind the terror attack. What are you shaking your head for? Why haven't they gone there? I mean, why, if the Russians were behind cheating everything so that Trump would get elected, then why wouldn't they do the same thing in Paris to get another insane right-winger elected there? I mean, they interfered in our election to elect Trump, right? Why wouldn't they be behind whatever happened in Paris here in order to win the election for Marie? How does she pronounce? Is it Le Pen? Le Pen? Le Pen? Is nobody in there that's heard her name pronounced that can tell me how it's... Nobody knows how it's actually. What a staff. You know, what a bloated, what absolutely. Thank you. Somebody has heard the name pronounced in the media. It was the broadcast engineer, the last guy you would think would be watching the news, the broadcast engineer. I'm just telling you, I have to look at closed captioning. I need assistance. I don't listen. I haven't been to France, and I didn't go to France. I went to Monaco. That's the toy kingdom on the border. I didn't actually. Well, I had to land in Nice. No, I don't have any on the ground experience. I haven't been to Paris in many moons. And the last time I was there, some vagrant homeless person followed me into a Rolex store, and the Rolex people wanted to kick me out for bringing the riffraff in. And I said I didn't bring the riffraff in. The riffraff followed me. And by the way, why are you calling them riffraff? Isn't that discriminatory? You know, I was up to speed on how to behave with the French. Anyway, look, don't distract me here. Okay, so she pronounced her name Marie Le Pen. The idea that Trump would be aided by the Russians here and that she would be aided by the Russians in France, it's no more far-fetched than the claims the left is making of what happened to this election. In fact, it's if you're the Russians, you know, it's easier to hire somebody to martyr themselves as in a terrorist. So I'm just waiting for somebody to. I think it's lack of consistency. If the drive-bys. And here's another thing. Have you seen climate change will fuel terrorism recruitment report for German foreign offices? Now, this is not exclusive to Germany. In this country, we are told that the military, the Pentagon, is asking for assistance and items in the budget to help them prepare for a dangerous world in the future based on climate change. You know, I was watching CNN today. What these people in this network do is just beyond reproach. They went down to Hayseedville. They went to the Deep South. I think they were in Nolans or down there in the Delta somewhere. And they wanted to find two people that don't believe in global warming. So they found a couple of gummers that are sitting there with probably 2-week-old shirts, corncob pipes, sitting on a boat, fishing for shrimp. And they're talking to them. No way. And no way global warming is not happening. And CNN says, well, what about the coastline that's vanishing right underneath you? What about the vanishing coastline, the rising? And there isn't any rising sea level. None of this is happening anywhere. And they try to portray these two guys as anti-science and climate deniers. And I'll tell you, they don't know how it is doing damage to their. They actually think this kook stuff is helping, but they're losing elections left and right, and it isn't helping. I'm kind of torn because I watch the lies, and it just infuriates me. And on the other hand, I have to stop and think, hey, let them go to it, because it may be actually turning people off of them and turning people away from liberalism, mainstream people. But climate change will fuel terrorism. Why don't the media say that climate change had something to do with what happened in Paris? Where's the consistency? If the Russians are tampering with elections to elect puppets, and they did it in the case of the U.S. election in Trump, why not do it in France? And if climate change is responsible for terrorism recruitment, and don't ask me to explain how that is. Terrorism recruitment is based on one thing, imams in mosques, and that's it. To say that the weather, to say that the climate is aiding the recruitment of terrorism is just intellectually absurd. It ought not even be granted a second of legitimate consideration, but it is. Yes, right here. Climate change will fuel acts of terrorism and strengthen recruiting efforts by terror groups such as the Islamic State and Boko Haram, a report commissioned by the German Foreign Office has found. Now, what is the real reason for making this claim? Well, it's to give themselves an out. We can't stop the terrorism recruitment. We can't stop the expanding ranks. Well, it's the climate change that's causing it. What can we do about it? I would bet you Boko Haram. Have you seen those people? Oh, by the way, remember this? Remember the first instance we heard of Boko Haram? They kidnapped 300 young girls in Nigeria. And our immediate reaction was a Twitter hashtag, Save Our Girls. And Michelle Obama went out there, had a picture taken at a diplomatic reception room of the White House, holding up a sign with the hashtag on it. I saw a story, that was 3 years ago. I saw a story that none of those girls have been returned. Nobody knows where they are. And I couldn't help but think back to the hashtag and what a great and heartfelt effort it was. Such a sad, sad thing. It didn't matter. These things, Boko Haram, you think Boko Haram is even aware of climate change? Do you think it's even on their mind? Do you think they've got scientists that are calculating climate change, where and when, in order to go where and when, in order to recruit new members for Boko Haram? This is why I've always maintained, to do this job, to do it well, you really have to be confident, self-assured, and not affected by outside influence, because this can drive you nuts. This exposing yourself to what liberals think, believe, and do can literally drive you insane if you don't have a boundary mechanism or a safety mechanism. By the way, the Associated Press report on the attack in Paris said that it get this now. Here's the real problem with the attack. The AP says that it threatened to weigh on voters' decisions at the polls this weekend. Yeah, you see, that would be terrible if French voters went to the polls thinking about terrorism when they vote. We can't have that. That's going to be bad for our side. That's going to elect Marine Le Pen. We can't have voters thinking that. What a bunch of bigots the French voters are likely to be, says the AP. I was watching Tucker Carlson last night on the Fox News channel. And, you know, Tucker has this unique aspect. He somehow goes and gets liberal guinea pigs who do not know that they're guinea pigs. He goes and finds the best daily example of liberal, extreme, wacko stupidity and invites them in. And then just throws their beliefs right back at them and asks them to explain it. And it's comical because what is almost always exposed is that these people are just reciting things they've memorized. And when certain questions are asked they have knee-jerk reactions and answers. And it's quite illustrative to watch because you learn that these people are not thinkers at all. They're not really engaged. They've just been brainwashed and programmed with propaganda, and they know how to recite it. But they're also, I think, undergoing lessons on how not to let Tucker Carlson get to them. Now, last night's example, have you heard about this? The Western Kentucky University student government voted on Tuesday in favor of reparations for black students in the form of free tuition. The resolution passed by a vote of 19-10. It recommends a University of Western Kentucky acknowledge slavery as a debt that will never be paid and to offer free tuition to black students regardless whether they have blood links to slavery, the antebellum days or not. It doesn't matter because if you're African American, you have roots to slavery, whether you do or don't. You do. And you automatically qualify. The resolution asks that a special task force be created to look into test optional admissions and admissions weighting based on geographical location, which in theory would make it easier for black students to apply and be accepted at Western Kentucky University. What that means is a resolution that would create a special task force that would basically say that anybody who wanted to go to the school on the basis that they need reparations because they come from a slave past would automatically be admitted. And there, of course, is a leader of this movement. This says Andre Ambam, but that sounds like a male name, right? The I watched last night was a woman, and her last name was Ambam. A-M-B-A-M. But let's just go with what's written here. Andre Ambam, one of the resolution's authors, told the Herald that racial disparity has translated into economic disparity, inhibiting black students from attending college. If you really care about diversity, if you really care about inclusion, if you really care about making this campus safe and accessible to everyone, having the student government support of reparations for black students would be amazing, said Ambam. Now, as I watched this, a couple of things occurred to me. One thing was, why does anybody go to college? I mean, this woman is like everybody else, primarily from the left, but it's not just restricted to the left. That is, there is a cultural belief or acknowledgement that you must go to college. You must. It is one of these things that if you don't do, there's something odd about you. If you don't want to, there's something odd about you. It's just one of these you have to do. Now, why? And I'm serious with this question. Why? What is the purpose of going to college? If you're a parent and you are insistent that your kids go to college, why? What is the ultimate aim? If you are a student who desperately wants to go to college, why do you want to go to college? Because when you get to the real answer to that question, then something else occurs to me about this whole argument about reparations and other things that I think exposes what's really going on. But I have to take a break now. We'll continue after this. Don't go away, folks. And welcome back. It's Open Line Friday. El Rushbo, serving humanity simply by showing up. Oh, we have an update on the Boko Haram original kidnapping. 57 of those girls escaped in the first 6 months following kidnapping, and 21 were freed last October. So the hashtag worked. Is that what you're saying? The hashtag free our girls worked, or bring back our... Well, I apologize. I don't know that I had seen either of these details. In fact, the story I read about this was just last week that nobody'd seen anything of the original 300. I'm glad to hear that was wrong. I'm happy to hear the hashtag worked. Well, somebody's going to claim credit for it. I mean, why else would Boko Haram... Well, I know they've kidnapped thousands of girls since then, but the hashtag, I mean, if some of the 300 are back, you know damn well that people don't claim the hashtag played a role. Speaking of the hashtag, what is it? Barack Hussein Obama is returning to the public square. The Politico breathlessly reporting former President Barack Hussein will make his first public appearance Monday, hosting an event on civic engagement at the University of Chicago. It says here that it will not be an explicitly political event. Oh, yes, it will, particularly if it's about civic engagement. So, Obama, I think this may be my prediction prior to the election coming true. We'll have to wait till Monday to find out. And we'll be back and roll on right after this, too. Sit tight. Open Line Friday. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. Feel free, whatever you want to talk about. If you've got questions, if you have comments about things not in the news, this is... I'll tell you how this started. I want you to know how Open Line Friday started. When this program began, we didn't take very many phone calls at all, and as a new program, it was under the microscope of analysis of people, because it was unlike anything else. There were no guests. There were no authors. There were no people on here pushing anything. It was just me and the things I care about, passionate about, thought were funny for 3 hours each and every day. And in the early stages, many of the calls were about me. Many of the calls expressing love and adoration, some expressing anger and outright displeasure. How can somebody with such an ego like you be hosting a radio show? Because it was new. And I began to realize that there were fewer and fewer people calling to talk about issues. And so I used Open Line Friday to let people talk about something besides me. And that's how it began. And it is a tradition unlike any other. We have held on to it, and we offer it each Friday as an opportunity for you to talk about anything. And because Monday through Thursday, the program's tightly screened, you have to talk about things I care about, or we ask you to call back on Friday. That's what it's for. Now, back to this story. And by the way, it was Andrea. This is a typo. It was not Andre Ambam. It was Andrea Ambam. And that's what I saw last night on Tucker. And they've got a resolution here that they passed at the University of Western Kentucky University, suggesting that African-American students be given free tuition as reparations for slavery, whether the African-American students have any direct trace to slavery or not, because there's been so much discrimination, and the discrimination is going to continue, and the discrimination is never going to end. Slavery, according to Andrea Ambam, is a debt that will never be paid, and as such, young college students, African American, at Western Kentucky U need to get free tuition as a form of reparations. Now remember, with everything involving liberalism, like this is proposed as a solution. The solution to what? Well, solution to the never-ending discrimination that is slavery, a solution to the problem that a lot of kids can't afford to go to college and their parents can't afford to send them. So this is presented as a solution, but it never is. In liberalism, nothing ever is a solution. It's just either the starting point for a new program or a new phase in an existing program. But nothing is ever fixed. Nothing is ever resolved. It's just like affirmative action. Affirmative action has no end. When it was devised and concocted, it had no end. There was no plan to say at some point down, okay, we have leveled the playing field now. We've evened the scales. We have made amends for the transgressions of the past, and now we're eliminating. And I knew this because way back when I talked to people that were the architects of affirmative action, and you could really make them mad by calling it quotas. And I asked them, when's this going to end? I mean, how many years of this is it going to take for all of you activists to say the scales have now been balanced and the discrimination has been? He said, oh, never. Affirmative action is never going to end because that debt can never be repaid. It was never intended to end. And just as this is never intended to end either. This is just the beginning of reparations taking whatever form the people demanding them say they want or need. But since this is about college and tuition, I want to go back to the question, why do people go to college? I'm talking about not the people that go just, they don't know what to do, they don't know what they want to do, they're going there to bide time. I'm talking about people and parents who are actively engaged in the idea of a college education. What is it for? Is it to get educated? Is it to become worldly? Is it to meet people and learn how to be sociable and get along with other people? Is it to be educated so that one can earn a significant amount of money in order to be self-supportive and to eventually have enough to buy a home and to raise a family? What is the purpose here? What are the reparations really for? And I'll give you a hint of where I'm going at this. You've seen the tax revenues that have been reported as collected by the federal government. The last 2 years are records. If you add up the federal income tax, the corporate tax, the capital gains tax, the federal government is collecting record tax revenue. Every quarter, the money coming in is a record. We've never collected more. We've never paid more in taxes. Now, it's another story entirely when you figure out who's paying it and who's not. That's another discussion. Okay, so record revenues are coming in. More money to the government than ever before. Now, let's go to the budget. Does the budget, and I'm not talking about Trump's, I'm not talking about Obama's, I'm talking about just the way Washington has been working. The budget, as you know, is really, when you get down to brass tacks, not relevant to how much money the government takes in. Because every year there is a deficit, a massive deficit, and the total sum of those deficits now add up to a national debt of close to $20 trillion. The federal budget is put together every year not based on how much money the government's going to raise. And there's no way anybody else can do a budget this way. If you run a business, your budget has to be totally determined on how much you generate. You cannot spend more than you bring in unless you've got a line of credit at a bank or a way to get some sort of credit. But then you're throwing collateral up, so you're running the risk of losing your enterprise, no matter how, if you exceed your income. In your personal household, it's the same thing. You simply cannot go spend more than you have and get away with it for very long without your world crushing you and falling in on you. But when it comes to the federal budget, none of those things are applicable. It's something called the baseline, the current services baseline, that determines every year's spending. And the current services baseline has nothing to do with how much money is raised. The current services baseline is only related to how much money was spent. So the current services baseline, let's say for Health and Human Services, let's make up a number. The current services baseline is $500 million. Remember, I'm just making it up, not related to anything. $500 million, Health and Human Services. So that amount becomes the baseline for the next year's budget, and it can never be smaller. The current services baseline has built-in increases anywhere from 3 to 10%. It's written into budget law. At no time is the total income to the government via tax revenue ever calculated. At no time is this income ever considered in terms of how big the overall budget's going to be. The budget is determined by how much was spent the previous year, and the premise is we cannot spend less. Our needs are increasing. Our people are suffering. Our military needs to get bigger. Our border needs to get stronger. Whatever it is, it can never get smaller. And yet, even with record revenue coming in, do budget writers say, man, look at all this money. We can actually cut back some of the, but never happens. So there's no relation whatsoever to the amount of money government raises to how much money government spends. Now let's take this back to the reparations argument and a college education. We can even stick with the income tax law. The income tax obviously now has nothing to do with how much money the government needs, because the government's already spending more than is raised by the tax code. So the idea that we have to have a tax code based on funding the government, that's a premise that a lot of people have been made to believe, but it actually is not applicable, because the government's going to spend what the current services baseline is, regardless how much money is taken in. So my question, why is there an income tax at all? If the amount of money that the government raises by taxes is no way related to how much spent, why taxes at all? Why isn't every dollar that is spent deficit spending? I mean, we've got a national debt of $20 trillion, and it doesn't seem to be doing any damage, doesn't seem to be hurting anybody. I mean, I've heard my whole life the national debt's going to be the end of this country, and it isn't, and it hasn't been. People still predict it. Well, at some point, Rush, the tipping point's going to be reached here, and it's all going to collapse like a house of cards, except you forget we got a printing press. And we have a Federal Reserve, and we got the Chi-Coms who own a bunch of debt, so we can't default. The U.S. government can't default. So why tax us at all? If the amount of money raised via taxes has nothing to do with what's spent, and don't let anybody tell you it does. They want you to think it does. They want the budget writers, I don't care what party, Washington wants you to think that there is budget discipline based on revenue raised with the tax code, but it isn't. It's all related to the current services baseline. So why are we paying any tax at all? Well, the answer is obvious. It's two-pronged. We do need to help defray some of the costs, obviously, but it's not the primary reason. Social architecture. You know what the greatest inhibitor to amassing wealth is? The greatest inhibitor is not a lack of education. The greatest thing standing in the way of most people's acquisition of wealth is the personal income tax. I have to take a break. Back after this, folks. Don't go away. My gosh, it's happened again, folks. I made a joke, and the joke comes true. Fox News, France concerned over Russian interference in elections amid reports of hacking and fake news. It was just a half hour ago I raised the possibility of the Russians being involved in the terrorism in Paris in order to impact the election. I said, why haven't anybody in the drive-bys included the Russians in the mix? And a half hour later it happens. Like Snerdley said yesterday, I'm just right. Just right, no matter how outrageous or funny or whatever it seems, I'm right. Oh, speaking of which, Snerdley brought me something today. The Politico has, I'm holding this in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers. This is big, folks. Now, this is one of these things I probably might not want to talk about, but I'm sort of getting tired of not being able to say certain things here because of who might hear it and what might then result. It's not as that I don't trust you people to keep secrets. It's that everybody listens to this show. You wouldn't believe the latest audience numbers. That's another thing I'm pondering telling you. But anyway, the Politico here. When you print this out, 16 pages. Is that what you told me this is? Snerdley submitted this to me with a paper clip. 16 pages, this Politico story. And here's the headline. How Trump blew up the conservative media. Inside the new power dynamics roiling the Fox News Channel, Breitbart News, and the Wall Street Journal. And it's written by Eliana Johnson, who is the daughter of Scott Johnson, who's one of the three guys at the Powerline blog. And she, I think she was an intern and a writer at National Review. Now she's joined the drive-bys over at the Politico. I think we have an implant there, an embed. Anyway, 16 pages. How Trump blew up the conservative media. Guess who's not mentioned here? Can you guess who's not mentioned in a 16-page story on conservative media being blown up? That's right, my friends, me, your host. And you know why? Because I have not been blown up. We have not been blown up. We are not conflicted at all here at the EIB network. We have absolutely no qualms about how we've handled anything, how we're doing anything, how this program is done, how it's put together, how it's performed, how it's executed. We have no conflicts, no doubts, no worries whatsoever. But apparently, many in the conservative media have been rocked and roiled by the Trump presidency and the campaign and trying to figure out what their position is and should be. Snerdley brought this in. You're not even in it. You're not. I said, that's good. That's good. He said, why? I said, it's good. It's good. We're not blown up. He said, oh, yeah. That's right. And we aren't. This stuff doesn't affect us anyway. I've always told you, my success has nothing to do with who wins elections. I'm not going to give them that kind of power because those guys come and go. I don't have any say-so what they say, do, or believe anyway. It's always been a mistake to make personal investments in people in politics. Here's Peter. Peter, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Welcome. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hello, Rush. It's truly a pleasure to get through to you.
Thank you.
I have a question about the Kentucky reparations bill. My children are mixed. I'm white. My wife is Dominican. Dominicans are 38% African genetically. So my children are 19% African. Is that 19% enough to qualify for free tuition? Because
Damn right. Yep. All you need is a thimble.
If it is, I can get rid of my Android and get an iPhone.
Yeah, you don't even have to have a direct trace to slave blood. You just, it's total skin color. 19% more than you need to qualify for reparations. You thinking of sending them to Western Kentucky when they get old enough?
You know, my son's a junior. Unfortunately, he'll have better options because he's a really good wrestler, and schools like him for wrestling. So, you know, he's got schools interested. My daughter, you know, she's mid to average to better than average student, but
they're going to be fine. You keep on that track. They're going to be fine. His real question, he was asked, what's the limit? If we're going to start doing reparations in the form of free tuition, what's the limit? That's whether you know it or not. That is a brilliant question. The answer, there's no limit. There's no limit to reparations. There's no limit to the size of government. There's no limit to how much the government should pay you. There's no limit to how much the people you disagree with should be punished. There's no limit whatsoever to anything. That's who they are. No, the question's very simple. Why do these kids want to go to college at all? If they're asking for reparations, why go to college? Why are they there? What they want is money. Why waste college? Just ask for the money. What's the point of going to college? If you're going to get the money, you don't need to. More of that in a minute. You are tuned to the most listened to radio talk show in America. You are tuned to the most talked about radio talk show in America. You are tuned to the most imitated but never equaled radio talk show in America, and it is Friday. So,
live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
And here's the telephone number if you want to be part of the program today. And again, anything you want to talk about, you can bring up something that happened on Monday, Tuesday, whatever. A question about nothing to do with anything we've talked about. Use your imagination. 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. So I didn't have time to go through this whole thing, but I have been rummaging through this gigantic Politico story, how Trump blew up the conservative media inside the new power dynamics roiling Fox, Breitbart, and the Wall Street Journal. Now, I haven't finished it all, but it seems to me that part of this story is based on efforts by some conservative media to get close to Trump, to be able to say that they are the intellectual energy behind Trump, that they are the people or the paper or the person that Trump consults for advice or what have you. And then, of course, there were people that lost in that effort, and they then got a little sour on Trump, became less supportive, and demanded that Trump supporters abandon him because Trump was destroying conservatism. He wasn't conservative. He was redefining it for people that didn't know any better to be populism or nationalism. And it really boils down to how the Trump ascendancy, the campaign and the presidency, has highlighted problems for conservatism. As I say, I haven't read the whole thing, but I made reference to this happening during the campaign of 2016, particularly as it related to explaining the never-Trumpers who occupied the conservative right. And it's basically, you boil it down to this. For years, there have been magazines and think tanks and other conservative media for we're talking decades here, who have published and broadcast and conducted seminars, the basis that they are the definition of conservatism, and that they are the spear carriers, and that they are carrying the weight. They're doing the heavy lifting. They're doing the heavy intellectual lifting and spreading the word. They're seeking to define it for everybody, and they're working hard to have members of Congress influenced by it and so forth. And they've been asking for donations all this time to continue this great work of defining conservatism and influencing power brokers and policymakers to be conservative. And it was a great arrangement, and it worked quite well for the longest time because conservative citizens are loyal, and they are very much aware of the attacks daily on conservatism, and they very astutely understood the importance of supporting conservative media wherever it was. But then Trump came along and just blew everything up. Trump excited people more than your average conservative organization of any kind ever had. And what really transpired was the fear on the part of many never-Trumpers that Trump was going to expose not the irrelevance, but the overall ineffectiveness of years and years, decades and decades of conservatism in think tanks and in media and in publications and so forth, because there hadn't been any advances in it. Republicans are getting elected, but they weren't conservative. And there were not conservative ideas finding their way into legislation. And despite the fact that they were winning elections, despite the fact that conservatives were donating to Republicans were campaigning as conservatives, promising to do X, Y, and Z, get elected, didn't do it. They reverted to inside the Beltway moderates or establishmentarians or what have you. Then Trump comes along and just, in a sense, demonstrated how that entire conservative infrastructure wasn't necessary to beat the left, to beat Democrats. And that posed a great fear. I mean, that constituted a great fear. If some guy who's not even a conservative can come along and demonstrate without any Washington experience, political acumen whatsoever, some guy can come along and mop the floor with Democrats, that a lot of others said, oh my God, we're about to be exposed here. And so the never-Trumper sphere was born. And it was rooted in pure, thoroughbred conservatism and the fact that Trump wasn't and isn't one, and therefore posed a great, great risk to conservatism, and we must not allow this to happen. And I think that's really the genesis of a story like this. I mean, the Wall Street Journal used to be the Bible. Its editorial page used to be the Bible for conservatism, but it became Never Trump. And they did everything they can to defeat Trump. Now, since Trump has won the election and Rupert Murdoch has sidled up to Trump, the Journal, who he owns, slowly but surely changing a little bit, becoming less opposed to Trump, not openly embracing him, but allowing that there's maybe some potential here, possibility. Fox is portrayed in its own way. Breitbart is portrayed as a great big winner in this internecine battle in conservatism because they were early behind Trump, and one of their guys is now Trump's chief strategist, and so forth. As I say, I haven't read the whole thing, but and this is one of these areas where I'm wading very near the quicksand here. I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, but if you're going to talk about this, you have to be able to talk about it honestly. And I think the real problem here is not Trump. It's the fact that, and I said this during the campaign too. I said, if you're a Trump voter and you're a former conservative and you're now, well, you're still a conservative, but you are gravitating to Trump during the campaign, the reason had to be in part that people like that were asking, what's conservatism actually done for me? I've sent it money, I've donated here, I've voted for it left and right in the name of Republican Party. What's it got me? And then because Trump came along and started just running rings around everybody and collecting a large group of active, engaged supporters that many feared came from the ranks of conservative donors and so forth. So there was some panic in that regard. It's still shaking out. But I just want to remind you that I, Al Rushbo, am not found in this story because I haven't been roiled by any of it. I have not found myself affected negatively by Trump's rise in any way, shape, manner, or form, except within the conservative movement, where I have often been portrayed the last year and a half or 2.5 years now as a traitor to the cause. But what nobody understood, well, never, enough of that. That's just basically what this is, and maybe if I have more time, I'll spend more time digging into it. But I have a sense that is pretty much it. Along the lines of this reparation story, Western Kentucky University student government voted Tuesday in favor of reparations for black students. Oh, let me close the loop on one thing. My question, why do people go to school? How would you answer that? When you send your kids to college, why? What do you hope the result is? Are you hoping they come out of there educated? Are you hoping they come out of there prepared? You're hoping they come out of there with their minds intact and they haven't been corrupted by liberalism? You're hoping they come out of there able to make a lot of money? What are you hoping for? Why do you send people to college? Because, well, that's just what we do. I mean, you don't have a chance if you don't go to college. It's just the thing to do. Still a source of great pride to have a child graduate college. That's a big deal. But what is the purpose for most people going on? In the case of these people seeking reparation, what do they want? They want money. Obviously, the reparations movement is about one thing, and it's about one thing, money, but the premise behind their expectation of money is multifaceted. But they want reparations in the form of free tuition. But is a degree in hands up, don't shoot studies guaranteed to make them a lot of money? My point is getting a college degree, is that equal to making a good living? Is it a guarantee to acquiring money? Well, it depends. Look, it's a multifaceted answer. College can teach you how to shake people down. College can teach you how to cheat. College can teach you how to blow up the university. College can teach you, how to deny conservatives free. It can teach you a lot of things. This is my point. Why do you send your kids there? Okay, granted, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go, at least for now. You have to go. If you want to be a warrior, you have to go. But I'm not talking about that. Those reasons, they're obvious. But if you're going to college for a degree in hands up, don't shoot studies, say, or anything, why are you there? Why are your parents sending you there? Why do your parents want you to go there? So now we come to these students at Western Kentucky who are African American, and it doesn't matter whether they can trace it or not, because they're black. They've got slavery in their past, and that makes them entitled to reparations. The reparations they want is free tuition. Well, that's not going to get them in. It's not, a free tuition, a college degree isn't a guarantee of anything. So I'm just saying, why are you taking the long route? What you want is money. Just demand the money. Why even waste the 4 years in college? Just say you want reparations and you want the money. Don't give it to the school. You want the equivalent of 4 years tuition to school, and you don't ever have to go. And you don't have to waste your time getting a meaningless degree in something hands up, don't shoot studies or whatever it is you take. Wait a minute now. I'm talking about college. I'm talking about going to college is not payback. Reparations is payback. And that'll never end. If they are given the equivalent of a 4-year tuition to go to Western Kentucky, you think when the 4 years are over and they still got no money, that they're going to be satisfied, they're going to be gratified, and they're going to thank you for paying my reparations. What they're going to say is, what good did this do me? I didn't see a dime of it. It all went to the school. And I had to sit here 4 years and I've got this worthless degree in hands up, don't shoot studies. I need more. You tricked me. Something about this, folks, it doesn't compute with me. I think the reason behind this is actually quite studied. If you are demanding reparations but not money, I think the thinking is that it may make people more amenable. If you can grant reparations by simply opening the doors to your university and letting people come in, I mean, it costs you income, but it doesn't cost you spending. In other words, you're not actively spending any money. And the reparation would include room and board and books. It would have done the whole thing, or they wouldn't accept it. My point is that after 4 years of reparations like this, the recipients still got zilch. They've got nothing. And they're going to realize that. And they're not going to be happy. And they're going to think they were tricked into asking for reparations in the form of tuition. And they're going to be twice as mad. And the people thought they had done great things by granting the reparations in the form of tuition are going to be hit again for having cheated them out of real reparations. You see how this works. Do you think the university will eventually go for this? You don't think so? You don't think reparations are coming? You don't. I think we're already paying them a lot of ways. We'll be back after this. Don't go away. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to very cleverly and sneakily demonstrate the political and moral vacancy of liberalism. And let's take this reparations proposal at Western Kentucky University. And Andrea Ambam, who was the student representative on Tucker Carlson of Fox News Channel last night, explaining why. She said, Andrea Ambam, last night, that her parents are immigrants, that she is not a descendant of American slaves. But she thinks, nevertheless, that all blacks should get free tuition, reparations, whether they are the descendants of U.S. slaves or not. You know why? Because they face so much discrimination. Whether they have a genealogical trace, whether they have slave blood or not, they still should get reparations like she should because they face so much discrimination. Now, she said she's an immigrant. That means her parents came here. If this place, America, features so much discrimination against people of color, why did her parents come here in the first place? What is the reason? If this place is so discriminatory that people of color should be paid compensation for putting up with it, why come here in the first place? Classic illustration of the moral and political vacancy of liberalism. You can use the same glittering example in immigration. We're told that countries in Central America and South America, they may be war-torn, but, they're beautiful places, and they've got wonderful cultures. And this America place, what a rot gut hellhole. This place is filled with discrimination, racism, bigotry. There's rape every day on college campuses. There's a bunch of Republicans running around trying to deny everybody their free speech rights. You've got guns everywhere. You've got people standing in the way when you want to get an abortion. What the hell would they want to bring anybody here for? I mean, really, On one side of their mouths, pro-illegal immigration and sanctuary city advocates portray America as the armpit of the world. Maybe the groin of the world. It is that bad a place. It's filled with bad guys and bad white racists, anti-women white guys, sexual harassment everywhere, rape everywhere, standing in the way of your right to a free abortion, standing in the way of your right to free health care, Why do they want to come here if this place is so bad? And it's a legitimate question, legitimate hypocrisy. Why bring anybody that you love and cherish like illegal immigrants? Why bring them to this hellhole? Why, Andrea Ambam, did your parents bring you here or come here if they're going to face a lifetime of discrimination? Why do it? For the money? By the way, I've got another question for Andrea Ambam. If it's so bad, why do you stay? I mean, it's one thing for your parents to come, knowing that there is going to be a lifetime of discrimination, bigotry, racism, and why come? But you were born here. Why stay? If this place, if the United States of America is just the hellhole of the world with all of this bigotry and racism and hatred and misogyny, denial of human rights for women and minorities, and why stay, Andrea? Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not telling her to leave. I'm asking a question. Why stay? You telling me that all it would take for you to put up with all this discrimination is somebody to pay your tuition for 4 years or however long you're going to be there at Western Kentucky? Why stay? Why come? Why would you bring people you love to such a rotten place as the United States? And then after they get here, why would you continue to run down the United after you've brought them here? You brought them here as illegals. You've got them in a sanctuary city, and you brought them for what reason? There's no opportunity here because it discriminates against people like them. So what did you do bringing them here? Why do they stay if it's such a bad place? Why don't they realize they've been tricked? And they've been snookered into coming here as future voters for the Democrat Party, but it's a hellhole. Why don't they leave? Because as you've told us, they come from beautiful places. Oh, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Mexico, such wonderful, cultivated places. Why don't they return? If America sucks the way you say it does. Rhetorical questions all, folks. Don't misunderstand. Okay, to the phones, Fort Worth, Texas. Dan, great to have you with us. I'm glad you called, sir. How are you?
Rush, it's an honor. I've been listening to you since you're doing loser updates in 1988.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The loser updates, yes.
Anyway, hey, I was listening to you talking about people are upset about Trump not being conservative enough. You know, he's not the purest conservative that I would have preferred as far as ideology, but there's no conservative out there who can get as much of the conservative agenda across the finish line as he can.
Before him, there wasn't one.
No.
There wasn't. The so-called conservatives were...
There's people in the field of 16 I thought had a better conservative pedigree, but as it turns out, this guy's doing more and with less.
Well, the people you're talking about that have great pedigrees didn't run. They stayed there and they wrote and they pontificated and they went on cruises and stuff, but they didn't run. They didn't run for office. So all this great conservatism, people never really had a chance to vote for it.
Yeah, he is without a doubt the most effective conservative that will ever come in the next 10 years.
I want to properly state this. Donald Trump is not a conservative. And in his own mind, especially, he's not a conservative. But that doesn't mean he doesn't think that way. And it doesn't mean that he's not oriented in that direction, particularly as he sees how the opposition treats him. These are people that used to be friends of his in some regards. New York liberal moderates, they were friends of. Now, he sees who they really are. And when I say he's not a conservative, I mean he's not a doctrinaire, ideological conservative. He cannot tell you who Edmund Burke is. He cannot tell you who Friedrich Hayek is. And he's not interested. It doesn't mean he's not interested in that. Donald Trump doesn't size things up this way. He looks at problems that need to be fixed, and he thinks he's got an abundance of common sense, and his way is the right way, the only way, and he's going to do it. You know what he's doing today? He's heading over to the Treasury Department to do what he can to blow up Dodd-Frank with executive orders and to do what he can do with the tax code. Since the Congress won't help him in anything right now, he's doing as much as he can with executive orders. He's not stopping. But he doesn't get up and say, what conservative things can I do today? He doesn't get up and say, what is the liberals doing today that I can really humiliate and embarrass? That's not, he doesn't do that. He gets up and looks at the problems that he sees and has identified and does what he can to go about solving them. And he goes out and says, yeah, we got the greatest armada that there's ever been. We got the greatest armada. It's steaming right now to North Korea. People, what? Where is it? They conclude Trump's a doofus. Doesn't know what he's talking. Mike, grab that theme that we used for Dukakis fundraisers, the Pat Metheny thing that we used, because I want to play it for people. He's talking about the loser update, and I'm sure people wonder, what the hell's that? Let me know when you've come up with it. It goes back to 88, 89. Anyway, you might find Dukakis in the computer reference, might be tagged that way. And at any rate, none of this means that Trump is not accomplishing conservative things, because he clearly is. And in fact, he's probably accomplishing more conservative things than previous Republican presidents who have tried to tell us they're conservative, but they really haven't been in terms of doctrinaire. But this came down to something. This election wasn't even about that. And this is what conservatives, for the life of me, I will not understand. And I'll just speak for myself, and I know I'm speaking for you. The objective in this election was twofold. There were two things. Well, three. I'll throw in a third. The third thing was lack of trust of the Republican Party because of all the promises, all the elections that people had voted for and won. They won them the House, won them the Senate. And every time that happened, the Republicans came back and gave another excuse for why they couldn't do what they said they were going to do during the campaign. So the two factors were, no way was Hillary Clinton going to become president. No way. The second thing was beat the Democrats, beat Obama, beat the left, because that's the source of the problems that most people in the country are facing. Liberalism, socialism, the 8 years of Barack Obama, an absolute disaster when piled on previous years, say the Clintons and even some of Bush stuff. And so the Trump campaign represented the only shot we had of stopping Hillary and stopping the left. And people rolled the dice and said that as a priority is good enough for me. They weren't sitting around saying, I don't know that Trump's conservative enough, I don't want to be betrayed again. They didn't look at Trump as betraying them. They didn't look at Trump as a typical politician. You know the way people looked at this? Year after year after year, doctrinaire politician after doctrinaire politician gets elected and nothing changes. It was an opportunity to vote for somebody that had nothing to do with the system that most people thought was standing in their way or not adequately representing them. And the people inside the Beltway and some of the conservative movement never figured this out. And I'll tell you why they never figured it out, because they didn't agree with you or me that the country was in crisis. They thought we were silly when we said if Hillary Clinton wins, we might lose the country. They were embarrassed when they heard us say that. They thought that was the most asinine thing because the country wasn't going to end for them. Where they live and operate and work, everything's fine. They don't have any illegal immigrant problems. They don't have massive unemployment problems. And trade deals are not negatively impacting them. And I don't care whether they were doctrinaire conservatives or hardcore leftists, if they were part of the D.C. New York establishment, when they heard people say, we're about to lose the country, they laughed. They thought, that's how absurd. That's so extreme. We can't. support people that think that way. They could not get their arms around the idea that the objective was to stop the left, to stop the Democrats, to stop Obama, to stop Hillary. And that's what Trump was a vessel for. Now you add in some real love for Trump, some real attachment to Trump, a real connection to Trump based on the fact that people believe Trump, and then you had a slam dunk win. But people were so far removed from the America in which you live that they couldn't understand it because they don't see things that way. To them, it boiled down to conservatism is being betrayed. You can't support the man. He's a phony. He's a fraud. He's destroying conservatism. Look at the stupid things he says. Don't you know how stupid You didn't care. Because there's nothing more dangerous and stupid than Democrats, leftists, the media, Hillary Clinton, and whoever she would put on the Supreme Court. This was not complicated at all. So many of them didn't get it. Now you say, what was a loser update? Take a brief break and I'll explain it to you when we come back. Don't go away. Okay, we go back to 1988. It was George H.W. Bush, seeking the presidency. What he was saying was Ronald Reagan's third term, and the Democrat opponent was Michael Dukakis, the boring, tiny governor of Massachusetts, whose big claim to fame was telling people how much he loved process. There was a debate, and it was anchored by then prime news anchor Bernard Shaw, who asked Dukakis what would happen if his wife got raped, and he was a witness to it. Does he think that the death penalty or severe and Dukakis gave an answer that was devoid of any empathy, any emotional connection. Well, Bernard, when talking about rape, we must make sure that we advance as much evidence as we can to understand that the allegations of the rapists are fully explored and understood. If people could, he just asked you, if your wife got raped, what would you do? And you're standing there acting like a wonk? So it led to panic on the campaign. This was after Dukakis did a Beetle Bailey impersonation to show that he was a tough guy. He put on an army helmet while being driven around in a tank. And it just looked pathetically comical. So it was getting down. I mean, at one time, Susan Estrich was a campaign leader, the campaign manager, had a 19-point lead over George H.W. Bush. And the lead was dwindling and dwindling as Dukakis kept doing this kind of stuff. And there was one last rally, a couple of days. It was in Boston before the election, where Dukakis could rally the troops, raise one last bit of money as the band that was going to get everybody all excited and revved up and ready to go, started playing the moment Dukakis entered the stage. Crowd's trying to go nuts, but they don't know what's going on. Dukakis looking around, wondering what's happening. Band tries to get it together here, but they just can't pull it off. Band tapers down, and it's time for Dukakis to start giving the speech. And this is it. This is where Dukakis made the big final push here. It's a loser update theme. And then they had the election, and Dukakis lost, and that was it, the loser update theme. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. We have a 10-year-old young girl from Morehead City, North Carolina on the phone named Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'm glad you called, and it's great to have you on the show here today. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, that's wonderful. What can we do for you? What's up?
I wanted to tell you how much I liked your books.
Well, that is so sweet of you to tell me that.
And I've just been to Monticello and to James Monroe's house and James Madison's house.
You've done all of that already?
Yes.
Which one did you like the best?
I can't decide between Monticello and James Madison's home.
Wow. You haven't been to George Washington's house yet at Mount Vernon?
No.
When you go there, they've turned that into one of the most amazing places. It's a miniature museum. It is the house has been restored where Washington lived, and I've had dinner there. I actually had dinner back in 2007 on the back porch overlooking the Potomac with it's one of the most beautiful places right there on the Potomac River. And they've got a library now and a great film presentation. So if you ever have a chance to go, since you visit places like this, you should go to Mount Vernon as well. But about the Rush Revere books, how many of you have you read?
I've read 4, and I'm reading your 5th one now.
Wow, you're about wrapping them all up. Well, and let me guess, your favorite character is Liberty.
Yes, he's my favorite. He's really funny.
Now, you're 10 years old, when did you start reading these?
I think in 4th grade.
And what do you like best about them?
I like that how Liberty is really funny and that I get to learn history also.
Yeah, that's great, because we actually take you to these historical events and put you in them. Well, Elizabeth, you've made my day here. I want to send you some stuff from Revere and Liberty. If you can hang on, don't hang up. The media is going to go nuts. The media has got to go nuts. Steve Bannon has granted an interview to Daily Mail, a UK Daily Mail, and whoa!
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
Steve Bannon, Trump's chief strategist, in this interview with the Daily Mail, Bannon says that he told Roger Ailes that Megyn Kelly was a devil and that she was going to turn on him, that she was going to betray him. And Bannon says he warned Ailes to be careful of Megyn Kelly. Wait till the media gets hold of this. Welcome back, my friends. Open Line Friday. Rush Limbaugh having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Let's see what else this says here. They click on it right here. You know, the Daily Mail summarizes what's in the story very easily. She's the devil. She will turn on you. Bannon reveals that he warned Ailes about Megyn Kelly. Told a former Fox News CEO his network star would betray him. Took issue with Ailes and Fox News after Kelly went after his boss in the first Republican debate. Oh, it was after that debate he warned Ailes, be careful, she's going to betray you. That's it. I mean, that's the highlight of the bullet points. I'd have to read the whole story to find out what's more, but I'm, of course, otherwise busy. There are other things in the stack of stuff here that I want to get to before the day ends. Plus, I've got to get back to your phone calls. The Washington Free Beacon has another report on the U.S. Census. I think this is census data. Anyway, here's the upshot. In 1 out of every 5 families, 20% of American families, there's not a single person working. I guess the numbers would make sense if you run those numbers against food stamps, unemployment, Social Security, disability. Probably makes sense. No family member was employed in 16 million U.S. families last year, or 19.6% of families, according to data. It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 1995, 18.8% of families had nobody working. The percentage peaked at 20.2% in 2011, has been steadily declining. Black and Hispanic families remain more likely to have an unemployed member in the family than white or Asian families. Not a real surprise there. Have you, folks, are you aware of the trick the New York Times tried to play on Trump regarding the Patriots' visit to the White House? Here is what happened. The sports editor at the New York Times saw the picture of the Patriots visiting Trump this year and remembered having seen a picture of the Patriots visiting the White House when Obama was president, and there was a lot more people in the Obama president picture, Patriots people, than in the Trump Patriots visit. So this guy tweeted it out, and he just tried to say that Trump is so unpopular. Look at how few people from the Patriots actually showed up compared to when Obama was president, when everybody was there. And late that day, the Patriots had to put out a tweet to put everything in context. And the Patriots tweeted, well, the big difference here is in the picture with all the people you see, they're standing there on the steps. The players are on the risers, and the players, the staff, the football staff, the coaches, the front office people, they're all on the steps. In the Trump picture, those people were seated in the audience and not pictured at all. And in fact, it's roughly the same number of people that came with us, the Patriots, to the White House this year as the last time we were here when Obama was president. So the New York Times, without trying to figure out if there is a legitimate difference, just ran the two pictures with the story that the Patriots so detest Trump, so many detest Trump, look at how few of them actually showed up. Well, now that sports editor, Jason Stallman, has actually done a 180. He said, bad tweet by me, terrible tweet. I wish I could say it's complicated, but no, this one's pretty straightforward. I'm an idiot. It was my idea. It was my execution. It was my blunder. I made a decision in about 4 minutes. It clearly warranted much more time. And once we learned more, we tried to fix everything as much as possible, as swiftly as possible, and as transparently as possible. Of course, at that point, the damage was done. I just needed to own it. The damage was done is the bottom line. But at least it was an acknowledgement of an error. But look at the credit for this has to go not to this guy. The credit has to go to the Patriots. If the Patriots hadn't set this straight, nobody would have owned up to an error. And in fact, nobody would have even looked for an error. Now, this is the kind of thing that ought to provide an object lesson to everybody consuming news in the drive-by media. Now, this was just, a photo trick. But think of the other tricks that are employed daily just in straight news reporting. I was thinking last night, as I'm learning more and more about this Hillary Clinton book. Folks, it is astounding here what is in this book. And what's really astounding is what was known by these two reporters and unreported. These reporters knew that this campaign was a disaster. These two reporters knew that Hillary was an absolute bust and a dry ball of a candidate. These reporters knew that the Hillary campaign was at war with itself, that there wasn't any unity, that there was panic from the beginning because nobody could tell anybody else why Hillary was running. And Hillary couldn't either. Hillary could not articulate why she wanted to be president other than first woman to hold the office, maybe continue, but she did not have a reason for running. And the reason she didn't is because she didn't. She was running because she was owed it. She was running because it was finally her turn. And they had shafted her on this in 2008, so they rigged the primary this year to get rid of Crazy Bernie and to make sure he didn't win the nomination, no matter how popular he was. She didn't have a reason. These two reporters are embedded in the campaign, and they've signed NDAs. They promised they won't reveal sources. They didn't care to. They withheld all of this news after the campaign for the book so they could profit from it. But what Democrats are learning now is how the media misreported everything from how well she was doing in the polls to how great this campaign was, to how unified it was. They're figuring out that they were lied to. Democrats were lied to multiple times a day by the media, which was hyping and exaggerating. And look at what's happened as a result of this. Has a brand ever been pounded harder and deeper into the ground than Clinton Inc.? And I think this is so important it's worth pointing out because it wasn't that long ago that everybody in Washington politics was scared to death of these two people. Scared to death of them all the way back to the 92 campaign and the Bill Clinton presidency, and scared to death of the Clintons when Hillary's running for president last year. They were thought to be omnipotent. They were thought to be prolific fundraisers. They had that foundation. They were taking donations, selling access to the office even before she was elected. People thought Hillary Clinton was the second coming, second only to Obama. And now look at how that brand has just been pounded. Democrats have been informed that Hillary Clinton ran her second campaign even worse than her first one, which was a brain-dead effort. They have been informed because of this book that Hillary Clinton investigated her own staff by reading their emails after her 2008 campaign crash. Democrats have been informed because of this book and other things that Hillary Clinton could not articulate a reason to be president in 2016. She literally couldn't. The last time something like this was so profound was when Teddy Kennedy was running for the Democrat nomination in 1980 against Jimmy Carter. It was so bad. Carter's presidency was so bad the Democrats had to do something. They ran Ted Kennedy, and Roger Mudd, CBS News, did a sit-down interview with Kennedy and asked him, why do you want to be president? And it was one incoherence after one incoherence after incoherence. He could not articulate a reason. Self-esteem, could not. And she couldn't. Even her campaign ads were all about Trump not being qualified, Trump being unfit. Democrats have now been informed that Hillary Clinton is engaged in a witch hunt to find the leakers to the authors of this devastating book shattered inside Hillary Clinton's doomed campaign. The Democrats have learned that the Clinton Foundation is in deep financial trouble, is about to shut down, and that Hillary wants nothing to do with it. The Democrats are being told that the next great Clinton conquest will come from Chelsea Clinton, and they're laughing privately about that. Hillary's loss was so bad that the Democrats right now, you know, the most popular Democrat in the country is right now Bernie Sanders. And he's not even a Democrat. He's an independent. How old is he? 84? How old is Bernie Sanders? Is he in his 70s still? Well, okay. I thought he had crossed the threshold of 80. It doesn't matter. They don't have, at the moment, there's nobody the Democrats can turn to. 75, okay. 75. Looks 80. Hillary's loss was so bad, the Democrat National Committee has put... Well, I think that's enough. They are just... United and Pepsi think they've got brand problems. I'm telling you, the Democrats have a much greater branding problem right now than even United Airlines. Because at least United is still flying. And Pepsi is still pouring. And here's another aspect of the book. One of the authors is Jonathan Allen. And what they found out... You know, Hillary had her introductory speech announcing her campaign, announcing her quest for the White House, announcing she's going to break the glass ceiling, announcing she's going to do all these wonderful, great things. She gives the speech. And the drive-bys just have orgasms over it. Oh, it's such a great speech. Oh, it was the most wonderful speech we've ever heard. And that's how they reported it. And even Jonathan Allen, one of the authors of the shattered book, wrote a glowing review of Hillary's announcement speech. But in the book, and he wrote that on Vox back on June 13th, he talked about how Hillary had nailed the vision thing. She had nailed it. She gave people reasons why she wanted to be president, what her vision for America was. In the book, the same guy writes of Hillary's speech as though it were a disaster. and Democrats who remember this guy's glowing praise, and everybody in the media had glowing praise for her speech, but in truth, it was a loser. It was dull. It was downbeat. It was uninspiring. A.B. Stoddard, you've seen her on Fox News and CNN. She was with The Hill. I don't know who she is with now, but she's got a column out at Real Clear Politics. Democrats tell Hillary to go back to the woods. Her column ends, Democrats don't owe Clinton anything, and they no longer need to fear the Clintons. They should keep her rehabilitation journey as far away from their own as possible. Lucky for her, President Trump no longer wants to lock her up, but it's high time the Democrats lock her out. My real question, how many people in the media and the Democrat Party have felt that way about Hillary all during the campaign and just had to lie about it? How many people really thought she was a dud and a disaster? Even during the campaign. They still thought she was going to win because they thought, no way can this troglodyte Trump win. But I think the Democrats have secretly, some of them, harbored negativism and resentment and lack of being impressed for Hillary for a long time. I think they idolized Bill, but I think there's been deep, dark resentment of Hillary Clinton, even in the Democrat Party, for a long time. We've spoken about Andrea Ambab, who is the student at Western Kentucky University who wants reparations in the form of free tuition for any African American in the country because of all the discrimination they face as African Americans. Now I got a couple sound bites so you can hear her for yourself. Tucker Carlson last night, and this is bite. We have two bites. This is the first one.
So the whole point of the resolution is that college should be accessible to everyone. Right. And right now there are historical obstacles in place that uniquely affect Black Americans that make college so that it's not accessible. Universities love to use words like diversity, inclusion, but they fail to recognize how slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, how all of these things still affect a lot of Black youth today and make it very hard for them to get into college and, more specifically, pay for college.
Are you kidding me, Andrew? You telling me that college campuses are clueless when it comes to diversity? And take a look at the curriculum. College campuses are destroying themselves because they're devoted to these kind of meaningless values when it comes to education. This is stuff you should learn at home. You shouldn't have to pay $20,000 a year and go to a university to learn about inclusion and diversity and hands up, don't shoot studies. That should be stuff you learn from your parents. Universities are corrupting people's minds with all kinds of worthless, to say that they're unaware of the discrimination faced by African Americans in this is absurd. But again, my question, Andrea Ambab, if it's so bad, why did your parents immigrate here? If this country's so bad, and why do you stay? When there's so many other much more enlightened places in the world, why do you stay? Okay, it's Tucker Carlson to Andrea Ambab, who wants reparations, former free tuition at Western Kentucky University. Carlson said, look, even people whose families didn't suffer under state-sponsored discrimination or under slavery would be entitled to that. I mean, from looking at the numbers, these groups tend to do pretty well. I mean, a lot of cases, they out-earn native-born Americans. Why would they be entitled to this also, or to any special consideration?
You're using the word entitled, and I don't know if that's the right word. When we talk about African immigrants who come here and face racial discrimination, I can actually speak on this very uniquely because I am the daughter of immigrants who came here. There is unique discrimination that faces African immigrants that many people don't talk about.
Why'd you come here? This is what I don't understand. This place is so rotten. This country is so rife with discrimination and judgmentalism and bigotry and homophobia and anti-tranny, anti-woman, anti-gay. What is all this stuff? And yet people continue to pour in here in droves. Why? I think this illustrates the moral, political vacancy of these people and exposes what their agenda really is. Here's Dennis in St. Louis. Dennis, hey, great to have you on Open Line Friday. Hi.
Hello, it's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, sir.
So bear with me as I kind of play devil's advocate here. Maybe with reparations, maybe we should be asking who should pay reparations and to who. In Dinesh D'Souza's last movie, we know President Lincoln paid reparations, the whole 40 acres and an army mule. And after Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson returned that land to former slave owners. So we know Lincoln was a Republican president. Johnson, he was a Southern Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps we should ask, before we start any reparations debate, should the Democrats pay reparations to Republicans? Well, who fought to end the war of slavery? The Republican Party. Against who? Southern Democrats. Then who went on to write all these Jim Crow laws?
Right, I know. I know. And who ran the anti-black South, not letting them into universities and turning dogs into fire hoses on them? I think exactly right. So in that sense, you have a point. If there are reparations to be paid, it's the Democrats that owe them. It's the Democrats that owe them. It is Open Line Friday. Rush Limbaugh, half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. The AP is reporting that they had an interview with Trump, and that Trump says he is going to introduce a massive tax reform package next week. In the interview with the AP, Trump says the plan will result in tax cuts for both individuals and businesses. He would not provide any details of the plan, saying only the tax cuts will be bigger, I believe, than any tax cuts ever. That's wonderful. That's fabulous. That's great. However, it won't mean anything if he can't get any cooperation on Capitol Hill. And the Investors Business Daily has a little editorial today titled, "A Do-Nothing Congress is a Travesty." Shortly after Donald Trump won the election, House Speaker Paul Ryan said that Republicans had a go big, go bold, and do things agenda. So far, the GOP has not delivered. You remember on Friday after the election, we had Reince Priebus on this program. And I began to ask a question. He knew right where I was going. And before I finished the question, Priebus said, "I know, no excuses. What is going on up there?" The usual computer print. The computer is firing itself, folks. I mean, it's launching items on its own. Anyway, Priebus said, I know, no excuses. No excuse. And that's exactly right. No, what he was referring to, when the Republicans got control of the House, they said, well, we can't really do anything with Obama in the White House until you give us the Senate. So we gave him the Senate. And then they said, well, we can't really do anything here because Obama's still in the White House. So we elected Trump. And then they said, well, we can't really do anything because we don't have 60 votes. And people have thrown their hands up in sheer frustration. So Trump is going to introduce this. And I think I know what's going on. You know, if you listen to Mnuchin, if you listen to some of the other administration people, the news has been, I don't think we're going to get to tax reform this year. Certainly not by August like we originally hoped. I don't think it's going to happen. And then people said, and the reason it isn't going to happen, we need the savings from our repeal and replace of Obamacare. Until we get that, we can't do tax cuts. And Trump's watching all of this, and he knows full well what he promised, and he knows full well what his voters expected. So as I said earlier, Trump's over the Treasury Department today, and with whatever power he can muster via executive order, he's trying to dismantle elements of Dodd-Frank, which is an absolute, it's one of these great liberal things disguised as a consumer protection bill. But all it did was put shackles on the entire financial services industry under the guise that everybody in it is a criminal already, and all they do is rip off the customer. And so we're going to make it really hard for them to even do business. So Trump's going to dismantle that. He's also taking some action via executive order on taxes. But I think what Trump is doing is flooding the zone and basically trying to put pressure and highlight the fact that it's not him. He's promising and trying to do everything he said he was going to do. But the people saying, I don't think we can do it, are not Trump. They are people up on Capitol Hill. Now, I know, one of the jobs of an effective president is to be able to get control of situations like this and bend congressional opposition to his will and whim. And I fully expect more of that to happen. I'll tell you why. I touched on this earlier this week, and it's just my opinion. I don't really have any hardcore evidence of this other than observing what you've observed. And my humble opinion is that the entire Washington establishment has been behaving, has been comporting themselves in such a way as to stall and delay and limit and prevent as much of Trumpism actually happening as they can, under the belief that at some point Trump's going to burn out, grow tired and weary of it, and either resign or the Democrats are going to impeach him or something. And I think behind this is a lot of the donor class telling House and Senate Republicans, look, you want to continue to receive our support, you're going to stop this stuff, you're going to stop that wall, you're going to stop these stupid trade things he's trying to do, you're going to stop this stupid tax package, and if you don't, you can forget us sending you any money. So, I mean, that may be a little broad in my projection, but I think something like that's happening because these people didn't want Trump to win. And after he did win, they got even angrier. And so they've been trying to wait him out, essentially. And they've had allies on the Democrat side doing what they can. The one exception here is Gorsuch. You know, they made tracks to get Gorsuch confirmed, and they pulled a nuclear option. That was good. But on some of these other things, it is clear. The Obamacare repeal and replace, tax reform, some of these big things, there just appears to have been a lack of similar degrees of energy between Trump and the Republicans up on Capitol Hill. And I look, folks, I don't know, as I say, I'm just intelligence guided by experience. Something tells me that there are enough, and it's not all of the Republicans, don't misunderstand, but there are enough of them that really didn't expect Trump to win, like Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham said before he became a Trump supporter after Trump bombed Syria, Lindsey Graham said during the campaign, I would just as soon lose and be in the wilderness for 25 years than I would rather win with Trump. And I don't think he was alone in expressing those sentiments. The establishment's the establishment. The way they do things is the way they do things. If some outsider come in and start showing how easy comparatively it is to get things done after these people have been telling us 20 years, well, can't do this because they can't do that because they can't do this. And here comes a guy straight out of the chute running rings around. Can't have that. We can't have it discovered that you can actually get things done for the people here. I think that's largely what's going on. What's going to change this is Trump's not going anywhere. What's going to change this is that Trump is not intimidated by it, and he's not going anywhere, and he's not going to be impeached, and the Democrats are not going to put him in jail, and these asinine, insane leftist protesters are doing nothing but damaging themselves and the Democrats, not Trump. So Trump's flooding the zone, massive tax reform. He's going to present it next week. Obamacare. Now, the story is that they're coming together and they may have found a way to get the Freedom Caucus on board. And I'll just remind you, if either or both of these things happen, then it's sayonara for the Democrats in 2018 and 2020. It's sayonara. It's over. Some people are already the opinion that the Democrats are toast in 18 and 20 already, simply because of the way that they have been behaving since the election. Brief time out. We come back. We've got more. Don't go away. Well, nobody's told me that I'm wrong. I mean, nobody's called and said, no, Rush, that's not what's happening up here. Nobody's called and told me I'm wrong when I say that there are some people who have been delaying and stalling and waiting Trump out. In fact, Louis Gohmert, in the newsletter interview, told me I was right about some of them. He didn't name any names, but didn't have to. I mean, we know what is happening. This is not hard to figure out. Here is Marianne in Brooklyn. Marianne, great to have you on the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. How are you?
Good.
And
very good.
I was a lifelong Democrat, but now I know how to look at both sides, and I'll never vote for another Democrat again in my life. But I'm nervous. But I'm not married, so I have two cousins. I have a cousin that went to Penn State. I had a cousin that went to UConn. And they seem to have a better chance because they have more networking opportunities and internships. But all these kids think that if they have a diploma, there's some gravitas to this diploma. They take out these loans, they go to these tiny little colleges in the middle of nowhere, and they can't find jobs. And I have a cousin who has a criminal justice degree. He's gone to every police department. Well, now he's in the jail, working in the mailroom for $8 an hour. And, Rush, you know, at $8 an hour in the New York area, you ain't going nowhere.
If he's got a criminal justice degree, he should apply at NCIS or CSI New York or something like that. It's a TV show. There's more crime on those shows than in the streets. But you raise a good point. When you said that young people come out of these colleges with diploma and think that their future is right there in front of them. It's not their fault. Look at how college education, look at how that is sold today. Look at how it's presented. It's your ticket. And
your ticket to the big time.
Ticket to big time, but it's instant gratification is one of the characteristics of youth today. The idea of waiting until you're 40, until the world opens up. Don't insult me. What do you mean wait till I'm 40? And when they find out that doors don't automatically open, they don't figure out why. They've been misled about the value. They've been misled about the speed with which things are going to happen because of this.
Right. And I'm 60 at the moment. I'll be 60 in October, and I'm unemployed. And try and find a job when you're 60 and unemployed. And my mom worked till she was 79 in a hospital in the kitchen and worked a full-time 8-hour shift.
Well, what do you want to do?
Well, it's tough, Rush. You know, I was to the Brooklyn Navy Yard because they have a state program, a federal program, and a city program, and it said they had jobs opening up for entry level. And then I read a program by I read an article in the newspaper, and it was from someone in the city council that said they wanted to pull up the illegals into these middle-class jobs. I doubt I'll be hearing from them anytime soon. So, but I read an article I want to tell you about our esteemed Governor Andrew Cuomo, who in 2016 created 757 jobs, and in 2015 created 141 jobs, and in 2015 created 76 jobs, spent $53 million on advertising for these jobs because he's got some program upstate going.
Well, he's got to get reelected.
Yes, I know. He wants to be president. Meanwhile, he hasn't done a damn
let's take
thing.
this back to you. You are 60, and I don't know how you view 60, but when I said, what do you want to do, you didn't answer me. You started talking about, well, I'm looking here, and this is a... No, what do you want to do? That's what you should... What do you want to do?
Well, you know what, Rush? I really would love to be a chef, but at this point, I have bulging and herniated disc and stenosis, so that's out. But I don't really know what to do. I have to find something that will fit into my disability at the moment, and that's tough.
That is tough. I acknowledge. But I have... The only place I'm going with this is that I've always found that if you're able to identify a desire, that you're going to get closer to being passionate about that than you will be about something that just comes your way. And since life is to be lived and enjoyed, life is not to be endured and suffered, and it's not a slog. It's not designed to be. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I know it is for all of us at times, but we only get one. There's only one. We don't get do-overs in terms of the entire life. And so there's nothing wrong with actually trying to find a way to get paid doing what you like, whatever it is. And in your case, I know you're 60, you have to fill your day doing something. And I'm gathering, I would assume that most of what you try to do during the day is stuff that you enjoy or at least don't dislike. And that to me would always be, that's what I did. You know, I got fired a whole bunch of times in radio, and as a DJ at age 28, I figured I had failed. I was too old to be a rock and roll teenage disc jockey, so I went to work for a baseball team. And after 5 years, I realized I didn't like corporate structure, and so I decided I'd better go back to what I like, because that's where I'm at least going to be happy. So I went back to radio, and I tried it in a different way. And I've just believed in people I've studied and seen who have basically have a day where they're more ups than downs. They're doing what they like. They've found a way to get paid for something that they like and are passionate about. And it's not that hard, and it makes much more sense. But then I know they're compromised. You need money. You maybe don't have time to wait to find that thing that actually pays you for doing what you want to do, so you have to stopgap. But never giving up the quest for what you're really passionate, what you really like. At 60s, I disagree. It's not too old. Depends on how creative, inventive that you want to be. And all of it's predicated on desire. Desire is the great equalizer, because once you have the desire, there's nothing stopping you other than you. Anyway, so you hang in there. You'll find something. And don't depend on Cuomo. You have just told us how you can't depend on Cuomo to find your job. What, 800 people he's employed here in however many number of years? From NBC News of all places, most millennials are finding it hard to transition into adulthood. More census news here. In 1975, only 25% of men 25 to 34 had incomes less than 30 grand. By 2016, 41% of young men earned less than $30,000 a year. And you put this together with millennial women claiming to be ashamed and embarrassed if their boyfriends or spouses earn more than, or if they earn more than their boyfriends. Trouble transitioning to adulthood. I wonder why that might be. We should discuss this further. I hope you have a great weekend, folks, and we'll be right back here on Monday.